Brooks, the co-founder of the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research. We launched in 2000 with the goal of delivering better Parkinson's drugs to patients and ultimately finding a cure. So we've had a few years to learn just how complex drug development is. Sadly, to bring one new central nervous system drug to market takes 15 to 30 years and well over $1 billion. So what does it take to get an aha moment to the drugstore shelf? Just explaining drug development is a challenge, so I often use the alphabet as an analogy to help make sense of these complicated concepts. The first part of the alphabet, say letters A to F, represents basic research. This is where a scientist, typically an academic, looks at some molecular process in our cells and asks, what's happening here? Why is it important? As taxpayers, we fund over $30 billion a year at this stage through the National Institutes of Health. This discovery science is the backbone of drug development worldwide, but aha moments alone are not enough to make a difference in human health. The next chunk of the alphabet, say letters G to P, represents translational research. Discoveries worked on for years in basic science are now examined in the context of a particular disease. This work helps us identify ideas that may actually get us closer to new medicine and enable the leap of faith from testing in a petri dish to testing in a human being. The bad news is that most ideas will fail at this stage. It's the valley of death where breakthroughs go to die. The very few therapies that do make it through the valley of death still have to navigate Q to Z, clinical research, where potential new drugs enter human testing. Clinical research is a lengthy, multi-phase process, and each phase requires years and new rounds of funding. At this stage, it's necessary to design trials, recruit volunteers, collect data from patients, analyze the findings, and finally, prep for approval from regulators before a drug can become part of a physician's arsenal. Across all diseases, the total yearly expenditure here is about $70 billion, mostly in private investment from drug companies. But even after getting as far as Q to Z, only 1 in 12 of those treatment ideas are ultimately proven safe and beneficial to patients. Between government and industry capital across that whole alphabet, we're up to $100 billion a year spent on drug discovery and development, and we have shockingly little to show for it. The Fox Foundation's total research investment to date measures in the hundreds of millions. That may sound like just a drop in the bucket given billions are required. But we believe getting results for patients isn't merely about spending more money, it's about spending the money smarter. That's why 90% of our funding goes to moving ideas into that middle part of the alphabet and beyond through the valley of death to the clinic. Our strategic investments identify and chaperone the ideas that are most likely to have an impact on human health. We provide researchers with the financial and intellectual resources they need so that they can get these results as quickly as possible. Michael J. Fox has a great way of thinking about our foundation's role when he talks about a department of cures. We'd all like to imagine an office where a high-level official sits at the center of all this work with a smart and comprehensive view of the entire field, orchestrating the efforts of all the players working on these complex problems. And then we'd like to have someone whose job it would be just to keep the whole business moving in an efficient way to assure that the best ideas are on a streamlined path towards the patients who need them. Sadly, there is no department like that. But this is the role our foundation is endeavoring to play in Parkinson's disease research. We've built a team of PhD neuroscientists paired with business-trained project leaders. Sitting at the global nexus of Parkinson's research, this team comes to work every day with one urgent goal: to prioritize research that can transform patients' lives. And in our short history, we have built the credibility and expertise to make real inroads. We understand not only science, but the business of science. And we're willing to take higher risks that can tilt the odds in favor of success. And we are seeing real progress. Today, more ideas are flowing into translation, and many of them are progressing from there to that vital Q to Z phase. Our work goes far beyond check writing. We really assess what is needed to get from A to Z, and then we bring it. I wouldn't want to leave you with the impression that any of this is easy. We must be sober about the work that needs to be done. But it'll be a great day when we find that last breakthrough. Patients have the treatments they need, and we can close our doors. Until then, we will keep at it and do whatever it takes. We're problem solvers, and we're optimistic.
Hi, I'm Michael J. Fox, and I'm living with Parkinson's. Of all the roles I've played in my life, the one I'm most proud of is working to find a cure. But cures don't fall from the sky. We at the Michael J. Fox Foundation can't do it alone. Each one of us can play a part. Clinical trials can help accelerate progress and bring new treatments. Participate in a research study and make a difference today. Visit michaeljfox.org to learn more. Together we can make Parkinson's a thing of the past. Join me.
And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the International Open Wheel League here at Watkins Glen, round number 11. And we are just underway here for qualifying. Of course, today is all about Parkinson's awareness, and we definitely are pleased to be able to present and salute the Michael J. Fox Foundation for everything that they've been able to do for Parkinson's awareness and Parkinson's research, especially trying to move towards finding a cure. As we see on screen, Graham Bunyan tapping the wall there just on exit, trying to start his next lap. Join Jason Lowe right now, racing for the Rescue Ranch, one of his chosen charities that he likes to sponsor each and every season. And so great to have you with us here today. Beautiful Sunday. Hope it is in your part of the world, or Monday, of course, in the case of our Australian friends who are racing here in the league. But Jason Lowe, a fellow Floridian, out there just putting in his second lap here, and that is we're trying to see if he actually gets up on the board, and he does. He goes second fastest, so it's all about getting in that clean lap. And of course, here on VirtualRacing.Network, we're watching live as we're just getting through season 18 of the International Open Wheel League. This is our penultimate round here, as Graham Bunyan does take fastest time, and we wrap up qualifying. But it's been a great season so far. Of course, last season ending with Graham Bunyan atop the charts in the points, and that's basically what we're looking at right now as well. We'll get those points up here for you here so you can see for yourself. But that's after 10 races. Last race, of course, Graham taking victory as well, adding to that wins total that you see there in that wins column. David Strid in second place, Jason Lowe in third, Dan Ensch in fourth. But you see Rick Lovison able to climb up there into that fifth spot in the points. And still a raging battle going on there in these last couple of races for that mid-pack. I think perhaps Dan Ensch has done enough to give himself a margin over Rick Lovison, but you can see how close that battle is for 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th position in the league. And so a lot of these drivers are going to be fighting for everything that they possibly can here today. And also a great racetrack, historic racetrack here at Watkins Glen that's seen so much action from everything from IndyCar at one point, Formula One, and certainly many races from NASCAR. Fantastic facility that everybody loves being a part of. So as we wait for qualifying to finish up, of course, I'm Trevor Greenfield, been with you since season 10. My pleasure to continue with you, and we're going to be having some very exciting announcements. I know this is typically only seen, this broadcast typically only seen by those who are participating and the friends and family of those who are participating. But for everybody who's watching on, some good stuff cooking behind the scenes that will be a lot of fun for everybody to participate in next season. And I think everybody's very excited about all of these new plans that are moving forward. So it's a fun time to be making plans for next season. You won't want to go anywhere. Of course, International Open Wheel League continuing with these races exactly as it is, but we'll be adding something in addition, and so you'll want to look for that. And so I'm just about to start gridding up. It's now official, so let's go ahead and take a look here at today's starting grid for the round number 11, Parkinson's awareness. This is for the Michael J. Fox Foundation, and of course we'll talk a little bit more about that as the race goes on. There'll be no yellow flags, but I'm sure we'll get plenty of chances here to talk about it. Graham Bunyan will be starting on pole position And that's obviously not a surprise to anybody, but nevertheless, one of the best road racers that ever seems to come out and qualify or try to run here in the International Open Wheel League, and able to take pole position here today with no issue whatsoever, almost 0.4 of a second over Jason Lowe, but a fantastic qualifying effort from Jason to get in that 1:26.25. Now, Jason's been making some improvements to his rig. I believe Graham has switched over to his new rig. We'll have to wait until post discussion and be able to talk with him in the Michael J. Fox Foundation Victory Circle. But assuming that he gets there, anything can happen, of course. On that second row will be David Strid, also one of the great road racers, and a great run from Dan Ensch to get qualified up there towards the front. Dan, certainly lots of experience on these road courses, Watkins Glen being one of those that comes up always for these Dallara IR-18 race cars. And so certainly lots of experience putting in laps here. On that third row, Manuel Gomez Esteban, and alongside him will be Mike West. On the fourth row, Richard Kelbaugh, and on the outside will be Will Stearns making another start here in the league. Great to see him back. Iñigo Mardones and M.J. Ramirez on that next row there. And I'm guessing that's all we have today. So missing a couple of our stars of the series, of course. Rick Lovison had just climbed up into the points category, up into 5th, and so he'll be missing out on today's race, and hopefully that won't affect him too badly in the points. Everybody does get a drop race, and perhaps this is the one that he chose to go with, but either way, about to get underway here for Parkinson's Awareness 190. Great to have you with us here on VirtualRacing.Network, and Graham Bunyan just about to step on the gas, and he's on it, and we're underway here with David Strid flying up the inside, able to overtake Jason Lowe there into turn number 1. Looking a little bit further back, it's Manuel Gomez Esteban, who's already gained a spot from where he started for Team Mazinger, jumping a couple of cars, including Dan Ensch on that start. MJ Ramirez able to get right up there as well. Up 5 positions, excuse me, and up front, very tight still between these 3 cars. Bunyan, Strid, and Lowe, 1, 2, 3, separated by only 0.7 of a second here. Fastest sector 2 going to Graham Bunyan, fastest sector 1 going to David Strid. So these two already laying down the mustard. I don't know if that's a term, but it felt right to say. Graham Bunyan still leading here and not really looking at a challenge potential from David Strid on board with the champ, as he basically just needs to put in this race, and he should have this one. Especially if he can take the win here, it's pretty much all done and dusted. In fact, I'm not sure, but he may have enough of a margin with the drop races, etc., that he could even just start and park this race, and he would finish the season on top of the championship. But at this point, there's a lot of pride to still be had, and right on board now with David Strid. He makes his way all the way down this long straight. Now this doesn't have the boot, or excuse me, it doesn't have the chicane there that NASCAR typically uses when they visit this track. And I imagine that if the Real Life Series ever visited here again, that would be one of the features that they would utilize. But because this is sim racing and we're not as concerned about safety, we can take that extra amount of speed into the corners and go just about as fast as we want. And then, of course, utilizing this back half of the circuit, which NASCAR does not utilize. They take the shorter distance once you get through that carousel. Right on board here with David Strid, who just a couple of seasons ago was the series champion. And as he tries to track Bunyan just up in front, still has Jason Lowe not very far behind in that Rescue Ranch machine, who's continuing to track him. Here's M.J. Ramirez, who's actually having a really good run here so far today. And by the way, you see him after turn 1 on exit there, going a bit wide. You can get away with that. The track limits are very liberal there. Can go pretty much out to the edge of that curbing, which is a very wide curbing, and still get away with it. MJ up 6 positions. And in fact, this was not long ago when MJ got around Manuel Gomez Esteban for that position. And then it wasn't much later that Dan Ensch also managed to get around Manuel Gomez Esteban, who looked like he was going very slow there through that corner. And then Dan riding out towards the outside. Gomez Esteban gets him back for that position, and they actually continue as we go back to the live picture here and jump back to this battle. They're now kind of racing side by side here, so this is a good battle for position for 5th place. Dan Ensch having a good run yesterday in the Velocity Online Racing race at Talladega, coming in 7th for the ALZ.org Last Lap Motorsports team, and proud to be part of that team. I didn't quite uphold my end of the points yesterday, but that's okay. We'll get back on track. Either way, looking at these two battling it out here for position. Exciting stuff. And it looks like Dan Ensch is going to emerge ahead there on lap number 4. Good stuff from Dan. Currently back to 5th. He started in 4th, but back to 5th at the moment. Checking in up at the front, though, it's Bunyan, who continues to lead here on lap number 4. And Bunyan just, once again, just trying to cruise on home today. Of course, he's out there racing as hard as he can. I mean, there's no doubt about that, but take a look at this time delta. Strid's managed to take a little bit back that last lap. We'll see what it does here as they go across the start-finish line. It looks like Strid still within about 3/4 of a second of Bunyan. Riding on board with Strid. So as you can see, these three still very close. Now what we are going to see is some tire degradation, and that really will probably come into effect here this afternoon. We take a look at Dan's notes from this morning, and basically says it should be an interesting race at the Glen, as any number of fuel tire strategies will play out. Fuel window is 11 to 14 laps, which means two stops necessary, 45 laps total, no matter what. He doesn't expect anybody to try and stretch more than 13 laps because speed suffers so much in the higher fuel maps. So he's expecting about 12 solid laps, possibly 13 per stint, and Reds start to fall off in about 8 laps. So I mean, basically, you know, if I'm doing the math, which I'm not the best at math, but that's looking to me like you got to get away with 3 pit stops in this race. And so you'll have to calculate that out. Now, is it possible to save enough fuel to be able to get it done without having to do that 3rd stop? I don't believe so. Just going off of the numbers that he is providing, you'd have to get 15 laps per stint and possibly a little bit more. But again, I'm not out there, so I couldn't tell you. You'd have to, well, let's put it this way. In general, it's a little over 30 seconds, usually about 32 to 36 seconds on pit lane. This is a very easy to get into and off of pit lane track, and I mean that's a good thing, because we've certainly on these ovals we've had our difficulties getting on and off of pit lane. It usually is very much a challenge, but this is a fairly straightforward entry here. The exit, as we do see MJ Ramirez making an early stop, so I'm not sure what this is all about. I don't see any damage to that vehicle, so not 100% sure what's happening there, but having to pit out of P4, and Dan Ensch going to take over that position. We'll see if he goes up on jacks and takes normal service and then gets out of the pits. But this is a possible pit strategy just early to get onto the different tires, perhaps feeling like the reds were maybe not the right choice, and he wants to try to do the undercut strategy of having the tire that works better for him or works better in terms of overall lap times. So taking a look at his overall pit lane was 39 seconds here at Watkins Glen for full tires and fuel. So let's say that you're one of these top drivers, or you're, Dan Ensch or Manuel Gomez Esteban. You want to try to do something crazy here. As you see, Jason Lowe has lost a little bit of time there to David Strid. Well, you have 39 seconds to play with sort of over the course of this race. So what that means is if you can somehow save fuel, and there's a couple of ways of saving fuel, which we'll talk about here in just a sec, but if you were to save fuel, you just have to break that down. You could go evenly per stint, per stint before you come in and do a pit stop, or perhaps you could go more aggressively, say in the first stint or the last stint. Either way, you can work with it. There'll be no yellow flags here today, so you pretty much have the whole green flag strategy to work with. But if you were to break it down, it's pretty easy. 13 seconds, 13 seconds, 13 seconds. So what you would need to do if you're doing 15 laps per stint is you would need to basically, say you could only have about a 0.8 second per lap differential between yourself and the front runner. So if I'm looking on now and I'm seeing that Graham Bunyan is turning a 128.67, Jason Lowe turning a 129.92, that's not going to get it done in terms of being able to win based off of a fuel saving strategy. So, and in this league, Graham is, and David, because David is right behind, last lap for David, even faster at 128.81. See, now this last time, Graham Bunyan at 129.15 and Jason Lowe 129.62. So there is only about a 0.5 of a second differential between Graham Bunyan and Jason Lowe. So, what you have to do is manage that time difference. And if you can somehow save the fuel over the course of the 3 stints and get in perfect pit stops, which Jason Lowe has been known to be able to do, recently, being one of the fastest, if not the fastest, each and every single time in and out of the pits, then over the course of the race, you can save enough fuel that you'll actually win the race based off of the fact that you don't have to do a third and final pit stop. So we'll see how long each one of these drivers is able to go. Now, how do you save fuel as we watch this this gap closing a little bit here at the front between Bunyan and Strid? How would you go about saving fuel? Well, there's really 3 ways that you can do it. So the first way, and by the way, this, I have been able to save a lot of fuel, and I have been in races in official racing here at Watkins Glen in these Dallara IR-18s, where if you save fuel, you know, you need to save at least 1 lap per stint, but if you're able to do that, you can cut out the final pit stop. And so if that is the popular strategy, then what you'll notice is the leaders start doing that, and really you don't have any choice. You have to adapt to that strategy because it's the fastest overall. So how do you save that fuel? Well, very simply, there is a fuel map that you can adjust in cockpit. So it goes from 1 to 8, and the usable ranges while you're racing in general are 1 through 7, 1 being the richest fuel, or using the most amount of fuel, going back to the 5th position, which would be using the least amount of fuel, which would be the leanest. But of course, when you go leaner, it tends to cut your performance. Now, it's not universal, because going from 1 to 2 may detune the car just a little bit, but you will pick up a little bit of fuel savings. So if you only need to meet a little bit of fuel savings, you could just go to level, or to fuel map 2 or fuel map 3, and you will only lose the tiniest amount of performance, but you will get to where you need to get to with the fuel number. Now, if you go to fuel map 4 or 5, significant drop in performance, especially at the end of the long straights. And this track has such a long straight here on this backstretch that we're watching Graham Bunyan on here. If we get that speed up there, that's 177, almost 180 miles per hour at the end of that straightaway. And it's uphill as well, so you need as much power pushing you up that hill as possible. Now, that's one way to save fuel, and there are 2 other modes that don't really save fuel. They just change the throttle shape. So fuel map 6 is more suited towards managing, basically coming off of very slow speed corners, where it can help you to modulate the throttle coming off of the corner. And then fuel map 7 is better for the higher speed racing, if there's a lot of very, very small adjustments that you're going to make to the throttle at the very high end of the throttle RPM range, then you might give 7 a try. Personally, I've never really found 7 to be any sort of an advantage in any situation. 6 theoretically could be, but just as I say this all, here comes Graham Bunyan and David Strid, Jason Lowe into the pits here to take on service right down there at that 40 mile per hour speed. And just as that happens, Dan Ensch marches by and takes over the lead here momentarily. So all those drivers coming in much earlier than one would suspect. Dan Ensch now 12 seconds, 13, coming up on 14 seconds ahead of this group, and able to get through here on lap 12. So continuing what I was talking about, as we see David Strid in tow, and now Jason Lowe just getting back out there ahead of M.J. Ramirez, who already did a pit stop earlier. We also have Manuel Gomez Esteban just exiting the pits, and also we see Iñigo Mardones for the Necky Racing team just exiting at this point. Here comes Rick Kelbaugh for Team Stick Quick, just getting in and getting his pit stop. And back out front, Dan Ensch. So we'll watch and see when Dan manages to pull it into the pits, but he's having a stellar run so far. Not making too many mistakes and keeping it nice and clean here on the track. So continuing with that, how else do we save fuel? Well, there's two other ways. The first one is with your right foot. And so lifting and coasting is one of the best ways that you can do it. Here comes Dan in at the end of lap number 12. So this will change our math in terms of what we can do to try to save fuel and make it to the end. And this is why you go out there and you practice. Fortunately, Dan losing connection here, which I thought was solved by his new connection, but it looks like he is still disconnected. Dan Ensch just got a brand new connection, and so he was feeling like that was no longer going to be an issue. Also, Jason Lowe, hopefully his computer's still working. So you can lift and coast at the end of one of these long straights to save fuel. It does save a considerable amount of fuel at the end of the straight. It might be enough for just a tenth of a second per lap. I mean, excuse me, a tenth of a lap worth of fuel. But if you're trying to meet that number, that's what you got to do. It could be a tenth of a lap. It could be as much as 2/10 of a lap if you lift well in advance, because at the end of that straightaway is where you're putting in the most amount of fuel usage, trying to keep up that high speed at the end of the straight. So the other way that you can save fuel is by doing a combination of both lifting and coasting, but also riding right in the draft of the car that is in front of you, because what that does is it keeps your speed up while at the same time you can lift your foot out of the throttle. It'll suck you along in the draft, but you will need far less fuel that way at the end of the straights. So you could, for example, most of the corners at the end of the straightaway that leads into the corner, you can lift a little bit early, and combined that will add up another tenth of a lap to maybe 2/10 of a lap. So some aggressive ways to save fuel. And collectively, can you save one lap in, say, 12 laps? Yeah, you definitely can. As we just saw Dan Ensch be able to do that. He was able to go an extra lap. If the race was, say, 37 laps long, well, Dan Ensch would be the only one who would be able to make it, or 38 laps long. Dan Ensch would be the only one who would be able to make it, but it isn't. It's 45 laps long, and so it's tough to say that fuel-saving strategy really carries much merit here today, but it is a relevant thing to do, and certainly if you were able to stretch it out to somewhere around lap 14 to lap 15, well, you might be able to win the race just based off of deciding to do a super aggressive fuel save or not. So once again, getting out of that little bit of a segment on fuel saving, Graham Bunyan is in the lead after that round of pit stops here, just working on lap number 15, about a third of the way through this race. About 2.3 seconds back is David Strid and Jason Lowe, about 8 seconds back now. So Lowe kind of struggling to keep up with the speed of the front two, but nevertheless staying connected and in that third place. MJ Ramirez doing a good job here in fourth place here today, up 6 positions from where he qualified. So having one of his better races, and right here on a road course as well. And I know that's something that MJ's been trying to improve as well. Such a very different discipline to do road course racing than it is to do oval racing. But he's really... I had a chance to race with him and Graham Bunyan, David Strid out at Monza a couple of weeks ago. And MJ just putting in the laps. I mean, just trying to get better and better and better each week. And, of course, this is also a great performance for Manuel Gomez Esteban up in 5th place. He qualified in 5th for Team Mazinger. and he's currently running in 5th, and certainly some very talented drivers as well that are currently behind him. Iñigo Mardones for the Necki Racing team in the 666 machine, putting in a nice performance, up 3 spots from where he started. And we've got Dan Ensch right now, I think, just coming out of the pits. So it did say that Dan Ensch entered pit lane all the way back on, I think that's saying lap 12. And now he's left the pits. So for him, I think he is now officially, yes, he's lost 2 laps. So unfortunate for him, as he was leading the race and sort of on an alternate fuel strategy, I believe. But he'll rejoin here in 9th place, and that is not to skip over Mike West, who's currently running in 7th and in that battle for 5th place in the championship, just having lost that lead over Rick Lovison for 5th place this last week. So Mike doing everything he can here to try to keep up on this Watkins Glen track and try and potentially overtake a couple of cars, get some more points on Rick Lovison while he sits this round out. Rick Kelbaugh back here in 8th place. He's dropped a spot from where he qualified, but he's keeping it on the track, and I think that's the main thing. Still 7 pushes of that push to pass left. Now that is something that I get so used to not talking about it. As you see Dan Ensch continuing around here, so he did manage to get back out there. So these drivers, of course, do have, as we see, Will Stearns is now, I believe, parked for the remainder of this race. These drivers do have push to pass that is available to them. And, of course, that push to pass is allocated in 10 different pushes that you can push. So, for example, if I push at the beginning of a straightaway, it will last up to, I believe, 10 seconds on the straightaway. Which is, I mean, sometimes straights can be longer than that. I believe, I'm not sure if, trying to remember places where it runs out, but I think Spa-Francorchamps is one of those places where it runs out by the end of the straight. I can't quite remember, but probably Le Mans has some extremely long straightaways that it can run out by the end. But either way, you get a certain amount of push each time, and you get 10 total pushes during the course of the race. So these drivers will have been aware of that, as Jason Lowe has already used 6 pushes of that push to pass. I don't think there is a graphic yet in SDK that allows me to show that, unless I bring up this other timing tower here. Does that one show it? Yes, it does. Let's see if we can bring that up. There we go. So there you can see the push to pass that remains for these drivers. And a quick reminder, you are watching round number 11 of 12. Penultimate round here for the International Open Wheel League. Graham Bunyan and David Strid, your top 2, and they're both in shot right now. So Strid doing an awesome job keeping pace with Bunyan here and keeping him very honest. I think Strid really looking to get a win here before the end of the season. It's been a little frustrating for Strid. He's only been able to secure, I'll have to go back and look at my notes here. Let's see. Well, there's the notes on the screen, and you can see it. So Strid just getting the 2. I thought he had 2 victories. I just wanted to make sure that he, in fact, had those 2 victories there. But, yes, he's only been able to take 2 victories here this season, and he's been up there, like, challenging, and certainly on the ovals, been so close to him. But you can also see that both Strid and Bunyan still have their full remainder of push to passes available. So at this point, neither one of them gambling and using that push to pass, and that may just be because they don't want to burn any excessive fuel, at least at this stage. It may be just a stretch to get that car around in 12 laps, even without using that push to pass. And talking about fuel burning, if you're in a fuel conservation, if you're in a fuel savings race, which I don't think this is, but certainly if the difference between getting, 12 laps out of the car or 11.8 laps out of the car is if you use that push to pass, well, I mean, you're just not going to use the push to pass unless you want to try to save in another part of the stint. Now, David Strid getting very close here. Perhaps we will see a challenge here for the lead. So there you can see David Strid consistently faster than Graham Bunyan over those last few laps. Just starting to reel in Bunyan as Bunyan's times going above that 130 mark, and Strid able to stay down in the 129s. As I said, it may be as simple as Bunyan may be trying to stretch this tank to the extra lap of fuel. Either way, it's like we had a moment just a little bit ago. This was Dan Ensch having an off track here. I think maybe he just rides it out a little bit too far to the outside. Yep. Brings it back in. Very easy to do in that corner. And part of the reason why this track is so popular is there's a lot of ways to recover your car if you happen to make a mistake. There's a couple of corners where it's very easy to go a little bit too deep and perhaps push a little bit wide on exit, but again, this place has a lot of paved runoff area, so very easy to get your car back on track and recover, and so a great track to run these Dallara IR-18 race cars. So Bunyan out in control, but for how long? It's about to encounter some lap traffic here very soon. That's Rick Kelbaugh coming up here in just a moment. You see the tire choices that are currently on these vehicles. Bunyan's red tire starting to fall off, I believe. It could be one of the reasons why we're seeing his lap times fluctuating a little bit towards the end of this stint. See all these drivers coming in on lap 11, and currently we are working on lap 22, so we're just about to see these drivers coming back into the pits here. Here you can see how many off tracks these drivers have so far. Looks like just 1x for Dan Ensch after that off, but a couple of drivers having a couple of off tracks. Here's some very close racing from David Strid. I wonder if he is going to try to send it before this round of pit stops. Number of points that these drivers, or number of positions, excuse me, that these drivers have gained on the track. So you can see David Strid started in third, and well, it was on the start that he managed to get by Here's a look at the start and how it all unfolded. There you see David Strid on that inside line. Able to get by Jason Lowe there in that pink machine. And Gomez Esteban just behind, trying to challenge even, taking over that fourth spot. So a great start for him. In fact, if we go back, we can take a look at Gomez Esteban. This was coming up to the green flag here. And just as they get on to the start-finish straight, there you see Gomez Esteban accelerating on that inside line, just kind of following David Strid and able to get quite a jump heading there into turn number 1. So we come back to the live picture, and here's Jason Lowe up on jacks. He's taking pit stop service earlier than the other two. There's Gomez Esteban for Team Mazinger pulling off and into the pits. And just behind is Iñigo Mardones. He'll be making his pit stop. But continuing on right now is Graham Bunyan. So Bunyan continuing with David Strid now falling off about a second. And we wait for these drivers to now make their second official pit stop. Jason Lowe dropping back 39 seconds. And that could be a factor. In fact, as these drivers come in, that extra lap may play a role. If I'm not mistaken, I see pit lane time for a lot of these drivers, 39, 40 seconds. We may see Jason Lowe right up there challenging for this lead, if my math is correct. So it is going to be quite a ways around. Put the track map up there so you can see what's going on. And a reminder, today's race is all about Parkinson's awareness. And I'm the proud presenting sponsor of that race. And reason why it means so much to me is my father currently, unfortunately, suffering with Parkinson's. So I have a little bit to say about that. I'll talk about it a little bit more later on. But for those of you who are curious about it and want to get more information, of course, head on over to michaeljfox.org. And you can get lots more information. And of course, if you would like to make a donation, there's also that to be done as well. Head on over give.michaeljfox.org/VRN. We're officially a presenting fundraiser for the Michael J. Fox Foundation. So we've already made a small contribution. We'll be contributing more over the course of the season. But certainly, if you would like to try to contribute, you're more than welcome. So I see that pit lane time was 38.75 seconds for Graham Bunyan, 39 for David Strid. Not sure how, if they had a 39-second gap to Jason Lowe, that he didn't end up right there challenging for position. But either way, Jason Lowe 7 seconds adrift of Graham Bunyan. David Strid now 2.5 seconds back as the fastest pit lane time that time going to Graham Bunyan. See if we can get that graphic up there. There you go. So it doesn't quite show that second stop. It takes a little bit of time for it to get out there far enough that you can actually make it out. So we can revisit that in a little bit. But according to my stopwatch over here, it is 38.75 fastest time. Jason Lowe pretty quick, 39.17. And we'll see how that trend can continue as we go through the race. But this is Graham Bunyan out in the lead, doing what he does best here at Watkins Glen. In second place, David Strid holding on strong, and that time by, we're seeing that Graham Bunyan may be just about to set the fastest lap of the race, possibly this time by. On those fresh tires. And in fact, he does a 127.02 for Graham Bunyan. Congratulations to him. There you can see that purple lap. And so since they pitted, you can just see the time delta there, and it looks like the in-lap, out-lap kind of killing David Strid a little bit. Back over to Strid, who's, I mean, he did himself at 127.78, but when that's close to 0.8 of a second slower than Graham Bunyan, you're going to start losing time pretty quick. Now, Graham did burn a couple of push to passes, and I didn't see whether that was on this lap or on his out lap from the pits, or if that was on this lap. That's a unique trick to use that I picked up in road course racing, and that is if you have a long straightaway at the end of the pit out, sometimes it's better to hit that push to pass as you're exiting the pits, because as you're accelerating, you actually gain a whole ton of time on everyone else through that acceleration process. So sometimes that's a very advantageous thing to do, and certainly at a track like this is the perfect example of a track where that would pay high dividends. But of course it does use a lot of fuel to use that push to pass, so something you do have to keep in mind if you are trying to fuel save. But looking on here, looks like Jason Lowe about 6 seconds back of David Strid. And now we did have this happen just a moment ago. This was Mike West. Oh my goodness, going off and tearing off his nose cone off of that car. You see MJ Ramirez going by, and that was not for position, but you see Mike West having to take repairs on that machine, jumping back over to the pits. But then this was also Mike West getting out on the track. I don't think we're going to see it, but he did manage to get by Dan Ensch, who's currently sitting in the pits, or coming into the pits at this moment. So not sure what's going on with the Dan Ensch 52ALZ.org last lap motorsports machine, but having to make a pit stop here with just 18 laps remaining. And so now it's my time to talk a little bit more about Parkinson's and the basics of it. And basically, this is just sort of off the cuff, just to bring awareness to the factors. It can be early onset. You may notice it, as Michael J. Fox did in his 20s. He started to notice symptoms of it, and there's a few different symptoms, as you saw in the video ahead of time. Certainly tremors, having hands that shake, that sort of thing, legs that can start to shake, arms, etc. That is one of the biggest factors that you tend to see that a lot in Parkinson's patients who suffer. And so that's one of the major symptoms. Additional symptoms would be a loss of stability when moving around. You may notice balance issues, and then loss of ability to really speak well, memory problems, sort of mental, cognitive issues, especially as you get older, and some of those things would normally start to slip anyway. When you combine that with Parkinson's, it can really start to become a very pronounced effect. And then you have certain types of movement that can become a problem. And so, for example, even just walking, a lot of the sufferers tend to sort of hunch over. They tend to shuffle their feet as they can't really maintain the type of balance that they have. And, you know, this all sounds quite extreme. And for some patients, they do suffer with this to a very high level. Anybody who's seen Michael J. Fox in recent interviews, he can't hold straight even if he wanted to. It just is not possible for him to sit straight in a chair and just sit there. But you may notice this with your friends, with your family, even with yourself possibly. Any one of these sorts of things. So it's worth getting checked out. It is a neurological condition. It's basically when a few different, for lack of simplified terms, transmitters in the brain sort of get blocked. They're not able to transmit signals clearly and effectively. And is there treatment drugs that are available? Yes, there are. One of the most popular ones is the levodopa drug. But carbidopa-levodopa is a very common prescription that many sufferers are on at the moment. As we see M.J. Ramirez making a pit stop here with 16 laps remaining. And that's going to be difficult for MJ because there's no way for him to stretch that fuel tank far enough to make it without having to stop again. So any of these drivers that are going to be stopping here in the short term are going to have to stop once again before the end of this race. But just to continue that a little bit more, it gets very difficult for loved ones to, you know, certainly to keep up with how to care for them, for the sufferers. And basically, you know, at some point, that person who is suffering may require assisted care just to deal with their daily activities, even though there is some drugs that are available for it. There are some therapies as well, certainly keeping active, both mentally, physically, etc., is a huge positive. But this is emerging areas, and just like Dan Ensch and the ALZ.org trying to find a cure for Alzheimer's, it's equally important to try to find the treatments that will work for the sufferers. And so those drugs that are in process, as you saw in that video, it's a whole complicated process of getting the ideas, researching, getting ideas to be filtered down to the ones that will be most likely to provide benefit, and then getting the funding that's necessary to carry those through, to getting them into the clinical studies, trials, and all of those phases, getting those passed and determining that they don't have too many side effects, they're not going to interact with other medications that patients are on too much. And so this is, as I said, it's very emerging stuff. Like I said, we would love to see a cure. Maybe that's going to come. But in the meantime, just being able to find the treatments to help those who are suffering is an equally important task. And that's really what it's all about with the MJ Fox Foundation. So if it's possible, they focus on that area. Over 90% of what comes into the Michael J. Fox Foundation goes right back out directly into research and development of very likely treatments. And so if it's at all possible, please head on over to give.michaeljfox.org/VRN. You can do it today, you can do it tomorrow, you can share that with your friends. We are an official fundraiser for them, and we salute the work that they're doing, and appreciate Michael J. Fox putting his name and his time and his effort on trying to help those who suffer with Parkinson's. And so continuing on here, Graham Bunyan has not looked back from turn number one, certainly lap number one, turn number one. There was a moment where David Strid was was kind of surfacing in the mirrors of Graham and possibly going to make a challenge. He was right there, but he kind of drifted back, and David Strid has not been a challenge since that first round of pit stops. So David Strid holding on there in second place, doing a fabulous job. He's kept it clean all race long, but of course, this is what we've been saying all season long, and the only knock on David Strid is just that he can't seem to beat Graham Bunyan at a lot of these races, and it's not easy thing to do. Many have come in, many have tried, some have been able to do it at various tracks, but Graham just seems to have an all-around capability that is on par with the champion. He just seems to not really have any real lacking ability on these road courses or on the ovals. Just like anyone else, of course, it could always just be sort of a timing thing, a luck thing, where you just end up in the wrong place at the wrong time, or, you know, there is always making a small mistake. These drivers are human. They're not robots. This is not AI. So Graham does make mistakes on occasion, but for the most part, he really doesn't. And he's sort of that 98-99% strength. You know, if you're like into fantasy racing, or, you know, he's one of those drivers that just, he excels in all of the various aspects of racing. And that's why it's always so, you know, important to try to increase your game. And for some of these drivers, it's not about trying to beat Graham Bunyan. It's about trying not to beat themselves on the track. And that's probably the first rule of coaching is, you know, don't even look at the other drivers. Just focus on your own race, you know, because certainly you look at a race like this, and for most of the race, you're not even battling other drivers. You know, they may be on the track, but you're either, you know, you're closing in here. If you're MJ, you're closing in on the lap car of Rick Kelbaugh. So we're just about to see Jason Lowe taking his final pit stop here. And soon, I believe Graham Bunyan and David Strid will do the same. But yeah, you're really just focusing on your own race. I mean, you may come across a lap car or two. You may eventually, if somebody has a problem in front of you, they may fall back enough that you can challenge them for position. Rick there doing an awesome job of just getting out of the way and allowing that space to MJ to get by. There you can see Jason Lowe just about to exit the pits, head on out for the final time today. He has just one push to pass remaining. David Strid with 10 pushes remaining and 7 pushes remaining for Graham Bunyan up in front. David lapping a little bit faster here at the end of this stint, and that probably once again owing to the fact that David is on those black tires and Graham is on the reds. Here comes Graham in, a little bit of a tire lockup heading into the pits. David Strid right behind him. So these drivers making their final stops here in Watkins Glen for the Parkinson's Awareness 190. And again, thank you so much for listening on here. I know sometimes these things don't mean anything. You know, you don't have somebody who's a friend who's suffering from one of these things, or maybe it doesn't seem like such a big deal, you know, some rescue group down in Florida, but it's always, it is certainly important locally in the case of the Florida Urgent Rescue and groups like that. But even more than that, just, you know, you can understand how in your part of the world there are groups like that, and it's awesome to just hear a group that operates at such a top level and does so much for the animals, for example, and certainly for something like Alzheimer's awareness, Parkinson's awareness, just to know that there are these groups out there that are doing a fabulous job of trying to find cures. You know, we all have friends whose families are suffering from these sorts of things, and you know, it may not be us directly or our friends and family, but there are lots of people who are suffering with it. And so just to try to raise awareness, and certainly the earlier, this is the benefit of awareness, the earlier that you can get diagnosed with it, the better your chances of long-term not suffering with it will be, because you can begin to understand the different areas that it's going to affect you. You can start to make plans for that. But in addition to that, you can start to get on some medication and start to track how much it's developing within yourself. And then certainly, you know, as time goes on, you see Dan Ensch there pitting, currently in that 9th position. As trials become available, perhaps you can try out one of the new medications that might be a really significant increase in the quality of life for yourself or one of your loved ones who can get onto that. But certainly we all look forward to the day when a lot of these diseases are cured. And is it possible? Well, everybody seems to feel like it is. It's a simple matter, but it's a very difficult thing to do, and certainly almost impossible to do without the funding and amount of research that it takes to do it. But essentially, it's about isolating kind of what is the causation for it, and then figuring out the right ways to be able to either arrest or reverse the process that causes it. Now, I guess I should add, while I can, one of the causations for Parkinson's is exposure to toxic chemicals and or substances over a period of time. And so that's something that, you know, back in the day, if you were a man's man, you didn't care, you didn't wear a dust mask, you don't care what kind of chemicals you're working with, you're just out there doing what you got to do. I mean, and I say that man's man, it could be a woman, can be, you know, man, it doesn't make any difference, but you're just out there, you know, they give you acetone to clean stuff with. Well, you just use the acetone, breathe a little bit of it in, and, you know, you don't wear any gloves or anything like that. And these types of toxic chemicals, some of them are declared to be carcinogenic. Some of them, like in the example of, for example, the military utilizing various chemicals and things like that for many, many, many years. And for those of you that are familiar with the wartime chemicals that are used in those things, Agent Orange being utilized on the battlefield, anybody who is exposed to that could have long-term neurological disorder from that, and Parkinson's being one of those. So that's just an example. And that's all this awareness stuff is about. It's about learning. It's about becoming aware that, hey, you can't just use it just because it's usable. You got to do your best to try to stay safe, and that's the thing that we leave on for our children and their children, is that sort of information and awareness on how to stay safe. Grant Bunyan put in a heck of a lap that last lap. Not fast enough to take the fastest lap again, but very close to. It was about a 27 point. It's there on your screen, 27.2. The lap previous to this one on those fresh tires. So David Strid hanging back there about 4 seconds. Not able to quite get up there and challenge again. Jason Lowe all the way back now, 28 seconds adrift of these top two, but he's having a good day out there. He races with virtual reality. He just got some new additions, some new channel, I guess you could call it channel blockers. I'm not really sure. Trim pieces to keep the dust out of the channel on his sim rig. They have these little channels that, these grooves that you can slide stuff around on. And not only is it functional, but it looks super cool. And Jason Lowe comparing it in the Discord and on Facebook to his previous real life racing rides, saying that he won something like 20 some races. if I can get back over to that. 29 out of 55 races with, I'm not an expert in dirt racing, but it looks like a modified. You'll probably kill me for saying that. I'm not exactly sure, but he's all crossed up and sideways in the photo that he posted. Either way, winning a whole bunch of dirt races. And super cool to see him able to channel some of that energy. And of course, he had so many health issues following that. But this is actually a race for position on your screen. With 7 laps to go, Gomez Esteban for Team Mazinger and Iñigo Mardones for the Necki Racing team running nose to tail. And Iñigo, that last lap, about 6/10 of a second quicker than Gomez Esteban. So we might see a pass here for position momentarily. Go back here and check it out from Iñigo Mardones' point of view. Showing himself in the mirror of Gomez Esteban with just 7 laps to go. He's going to get a good run over that curbing. Hear it sort of dragging on the under tray just a little bit. And it looks like Gomez Esteban, sensing that Iñigo was a little bit faster, he pulls to the outside lane and allows Iñigo Mardones to go down the inside. Gomez holding tough on the outside, not willing to concede that position. So he'll stay on the inside of the track, but Mardones gives it another shot around the outside, can't quite hold that position. So they try to swap places for a moment, but end up right back where they were. We'll see if... Oh, and Mardones gets on the gas a little bit early, spins the rear tires, and that puts him over into the inside wall. He goes back to the outside, and that is unfortunately going to take away his chances to be able to compete for that position. But he was looking so good. He was going for 5th place, and now he's going to have to get damage repair with 6 laps remaining. But just so easy to do. That's one of those corners where it's easy to drift out wide and get into the grass. That is one of the few corners where the exit is not really properly paved and handled. It's very easy to drift out wide, get into that grass and loop it around. But what Iñigo Mardones did there on older tires, also equally easy to do. You can try to get on the gas early, and unfortunately you can spin it out just as he did. So Bunyan in the lead over David Strid by 3.6 seconds. Jason Lowe for that Rescue Ranch hanging on in 3rd, 32 seconds back. MJ Ramirez having a good run, up 6 positions in that 4th spot. And Iñigo Mardones finally making it into pit road. Now he'll actually hold on to that 6th place because Rick Kelbaugh is much further back than that, I believe. No, actually I take it back. It does look like Rick Kelbaugh has managed to get by Mardones because Mardones is officially out of the race. He has parked it. He's done. So even though Kelbaugh was another lap down, I guess Mardones choosing to not finish this one. And as a result, he will drop down in the order. So Bunyan just putting in the final laps here. He had 5 to go last time by. Barney the flagman there giving him the high 5. This will be just 4 laps to go now. And it's been, as I said, just a very solid race for Bunyan. He's now been using up some of that push to pass. And now we can see that David Strid is on push to pass as well. You see on his steering wheel, you'll see that green there. That means the push to pass is active. The flashing lights on the outside of the steering wheel also indicating that, and there you can see it goes off. So that's what I'm talking about, is you only get so long, and then it does wear off eventually. It just depends on how early you get on that push to pass, and then it will eventually wear off at the end of the straight. But why don't we check in here with Graham Bunyan as he now goes through the last half of the circuit. This corner right here is another one that I personally have struggled with, and it does come down to the setup, whether you're running an open setup, you know, that you can modify. You have to, I don't know, you have to make it a little bit looser than you might like through that corner. But let's ride on board with Graham Bunyan an entire lap and see what it's like to ride here at Watkins Glen. And that's a entire lap around the Watkins Glen Classic Circuit with our champion from last season and unofficial champion already for this season. Of course, just one more race remaining. You won't want to miss it next week at Indy. It's always a great race, and we generally see some sort of shocking surprise. Of course, those of you no, it won't be next week. I take it back. We are going to skip that week, and instead of having a week 13 break, we're actually going to be racing during week 13. But because the real life Indy is this next week, and so we certainly don't want to overlap that. But for those of you who are the fans of the real life series, of course, today being pole day and I guess bump day, although that's not really true, but pole day and final row day, so to speak. And it'll be fun to check in on that. Yesterday was pretty exciting from the Speedway at Real Life Indy. So we look forward to seeing you here in 2 weeks' time on VirtualRacing.Network for our Indy. And that will be a lot of fun. Is Graham Bunyan going to get the white flag here from Barney the Flag Man, who changes appearance every single race, which is awesome. Just one more lap remaining for Graham, as David has been consistently gaining a little bit of time each and every lap, as both of these drivers at the front are now using their push to pass. And both of them are on the red tires, trying to stretch this race to its maximum. Graham still has one more push of that button to go. David Strid does have two more to go. Jason Lowe still with one in the bank. He's making his way just now on the front half of the circuit, 35 seconds back. MJ Ramirez still holding on to that fourth place. looking very solid out here this afternoon. Gomez Esteban, well, he was about to lose that position to Iñigo Mardones, but he's actually, by just keeping it clean, he's on his way to a top 5. And typically that's the way that we see Dan Ensch usually play it. Nice and safe, but unfortunately it looked like he had a couple of issues today, but no issues whatsoever for Graham Bunyan, last season's champion, this season's champion to be crowned here in 2 weeks' time. But today, the victor of the Parkinson's Awareness 190 at Watkins Glen. Congratulations to Graham Bunyan. A fantastic drive today. Very, very, very solid performance from Graham. And David Strid in second place. Jason Lowe looks like he's just coming around to complete the last half of this circuit. He'll be in just a moment's time. There you go, across the start finish line, and Jason Lowe taking third place. Graham Bunyan sits while David Strid celebrates. I think Strid celebrating second place in the championship, and a fantastic run from himself here today. Not sure if we're going to get some celebration from Graham Bunyan, but we'll look forward to seeing that as well. Stay tuned here for post-race discussion in the Parkinson's Awareness Michael J. Fox Foundation Victory Circle discussion as Graham Bunyan lights off those tires. Gives the crowd a little bit of a thrill. There you can see the final results on your screen. And so we'll be back in just a moment with final discussion and a chance to chat with at least a couple of our top podium finishers. Stay tuned. And welcome back here on VirtualRacing.Network. You just saw it live, round number 11 of 12 of season 18 for the International Open Wheel League. It is the Parkinson's Awareness 190 here at Watkins Glen, the classic version of the track with no chicanes. And Graham Bunyan dominated here from pole to flag victory. An absolutely stunning performance by Graham Bunyan, just asserting why he's probably the best road course racer here today. But David Strid kept him honest, finishing just 2.61 seconds back. I mean, that is an absolutely, I mean, that's as good of a performance as you could do without being right there to challenge for the win. And anytime you're that close as you're well within an easy shot, all Graham would have had to do was throw it off the track once and David would have been able to take victory here. But either way, Graham not making those types of mistakes, David able to hang on to second. Great run from him, and of course he solidifies that second place in the championship for himself. Third to the Rescue Ranch driver Jason Lowe. Great run for him here today. Fortunate to stay connected all race long. I know that's been an issue. MJ Ramirez racing in fourth place and able to hang on as well. That's going to be a pride finish. It's really close to getting a podium finish on a road course, which I know he would love to do. But either way, great run from MJ to get fourth. Manuel Gomez Esteban with another top 5 for Team Mazinger. A great finish for him. Not the fastest, but at the same time, he didn't make the same types of mistakes that others have made. And a lot of times that's the way to consistency. And honestly, that's been one of the things that Rick Lovison has been doing, but we didn't see Rick out there today. Road courses also not really his thing. So looking back, Mike West, the series chief steward, finishing in 6th place. Rick Kelbaugh for Team Stick Quick finishing in 7th. Dan Ensch for the ALZ.org Last Lap Motorsports team had, I think, much higher hopes that things would work out today. I think suffering perhaps some technical issues put him back in 8th place. Iñigo Mardones was challenging for 5th place, but you saw him try to make that challenge, and Gomez Esteban put up quite a fight through several corners. And then Iñigo Mardones trying to get down to the inside on exit, spun up the tires, put it into the fence, and had to take repairs. He finishes in 9th place, I think a little frustrated, decided to hop out of the cockpit when he looked at how much time was left to repair that machine. And Will Stearns, not really having many laps today, just a couple of laps just to start and park, I guess. Road course is probably not Will's thing, but either way, great to have him join us nevertheless. And so we'll take a look here into our ALZ, no, almost said the wrong one, Parkinson's awareness victory circle discussion. And hey, it's Jason Lowe who finished in 3rd place here today. And Jason, you had a really good run. It was great to see that you stayed connected through the whole race. Talk us through what your race was like out there today. Was it a difficult one? How did it go for you today? And congratulations on your 3rd.
Hey, thank you, Trevor. Had a good qualifying result. Very unexpected to be on the front row with Graham, but was real happy about that. David got a better start, and I wasn't going to contest in turn 1, so I was content to drop in the 3rd and see what happened. And basically, I was able to hang with Graham and David if I ran every lap like a qualifying lap. And about lap 5 or 6, I was like, I'm going to crash. I had to settle down to my own pace because I was giving it everything I had just to stay with them. And I was going to crash. So I dialed it down to my own pace, and they started to slowly pull away. I felt like I had a good pace compared to who was behind me. No one was really running me down. Got the tires swapped, so we used both compounds. And then toward the end, I had to save some fuel just to make it to the end. Ended up with 0.3 of a gallon left at the end.
Oh, my.
But, yeah, happy to be on the podium. One extra, I would have had a perfect race. I dropped the right front one time, or I would have had a 0x race, which would have been amazing, but still close. And happy that I was able to qualify near the front. Happy that I was able to stay with those guys a little bit. But man, what a couple of great road racers they are. I mean, they're the 2 best we've got. And so to finish 3rd to them, I feel fortunate, and I'm happy.
Well, and as you mentioned, you were able to stick with them through the early part of the tire cycle, and you felt like you could stay up there and match their pace. However, it did become apparent at one point that, hey, they're able to sustain this pace, and you weren't able to. So at what point, making that decision, discretion, the better part of valor, and that's how you end up holding on to a 3rd place, just understanding, hey, maybe the pace isn't in the car today?
Well, no, the pace wasn't in the driver. The car was fine. I started the race on reds. I think that Graham and David both started on the blacks. And the difference is after about lap 5 or 6, the reds really start dropping off. And that's when I started slowing down because I almost lost the rear end of the car one time under acceleration. And I was just like, well, those red tires starting to get greasy. So once I switched compounds to the primary, to the black, very more consistent throughout the whole run. You could pretty much run, you didn't drop off 3 seconds at the end of the run. And the car was also easier to drive on the blacks. So again, happy to finish on the podium. Had a couple rough weeks with computer issues and just me not driving well. So we take a week off now, and then we'll not race next week during Indy, and then we'll be at Indy ourselves in 2 weeks. Always look forward to that. I've had some success at Indy, but no matter what, I enjoy racing with these guys every week. Enjoy displaying the different things that we promote. Thank you for sponsoring the race this week, and I'll certainly be making a donation to your cause.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I'm had a rough couple weeks. It's nice to be, even though it's 3rd, it's nice to be back on the podium and finish the race with no problems. Sorry for Dan Ensch. He's been battling internet problems for like the last 3 weeks, and he thought he had it solved, and he just doesn't have it yet. So bless him, and that he can get his problems fixed out, because I certainly know how frustrating it is to have a mechanical DNF.
Absolutely. Well, and in addition to that, I was talking about your the covers that you got, the gap covers or whatever you want to call them, dust covers. I think they're speed strips. You're making it a little bit more aerodynamic.
Well, I'm not really a guy to decorate stuff, but somebody on the forums, it's 80/20 slot covers, so you don't get dust in all the slots. And I had just started cleaning the rig when I saw them, because I had a bunch of dust. I was like, man, if I dust it all up and then put these covers in, I don't have to worry about it anymore. And I just sold my motion seat because I've got a back issue going on where I just can't get bounced around. So I sold my motion seat, shipped it off to Virginia, and got a new seat that was black and blue. The last race car I drove in real life was a dirt modified that was black and blue. And so I put those blue strips on my black 80/20, and it kind of was a throwback to my real racing days. Kind of made me smile.
Absolutely. Well, and I know it'd be awesome if you could get out there in real life as well and be able to attack the track. But you're having a lot of fun out there in sim racing. We love it that you're able to do this each and every week, and you keep those two Australians very honest out there. They got to put in a solid performance to beat you. Congratulations on third. You're back on the podium. And, hey, anything can happen at Indy, so we'll see you in a couple of weeks, and we'll look forward to that, my friend.
Hey, Trevor, thanks for everything you do, and thanks to all the members of the league. It's been a great season.
Absolutely has been great. Thank you, Jason. And so that is Jason Lowe for Racing for the Rescue Ranch each and every week. He's a big contributor, of course, to not only the whole season long, but a big part of the admin team, and also a great contributor to the broadcast. We do appreciate everything that he does. And so let's go ahead and, of course, we say thank you and congratulations to our second place David Strid. We won't get a chance to chat with him here today, but we will get a chance to chat with none other than last season's champion, multiple time champion here in the International Open Wheel League, and basically this season's champion, though it's not official yet. But congratulations, Graham Bunyan, joining us here in Parkinson's Awareness, Michael J. Fox Foundation Circle, Victor Circle. Graham Bunyan, you took pole position. You led every single lap. You were absolutely unstoppable out there. What could you attribute today's performance to? Was it just keeping your head down and staying focused? What did you do that was special today to just put in such a dominant race? Or is this just what you do?
Man, I tell you, hey, being focused, the only thing I was focused on was hopefully my wheel lasted the race. I have no idea what was going on with my steering wheel. I had no telemetry on it. It was throwing up buttons left, right, and center. I was changing gears in turns that I wasn't even changing. So guess what? I'm going to have to swap out to that new rig, I think. Oh my God.
So this is your old rig that's malfunctioning now?
Yeah, I don't know what the story was. I've just turned the base off and back on again, and everything's working fine. But throughout that whole race, I had no telemetry on the wheel. My buttons were just throwing up random messages, changing gears on me randomly, throwing up the push to pass in random corners. So I just used the push to pass right at the very end, what I had left, but it used like 4 or 5 push to passes, and I didn't even push any buttons.
I think it's David Strid, the sneaky devil. He's trying to subvert you to slow you down.
Oh man, I tell you, it was like I had gremlins in the computer. Like I'm thinking, hey, what's going on here? And then it'd go to the menu settings on the steering wheel. I'm like, oh my God. And I actually said at one point there, be careful behind me. That's when Dave caught up to me. I said, be careful behind me. I said, because I don't know if this is going to cut out and I'm going to lock up or what. But I'm just driving.
Well, that's always the type of messages that you want to hear when you're racing. Like, careful behind me, because I may do anything unexpected. And certainly David backed off a little bit. But talk about that. I mean, David was right there. He did catch up to you. And then there at the end of the race, 2.61 seconds back. You know, from doing these road course races, I mean, if you're just a little bit off, you can be 10 seconds back. You can be 20 seconds back at the end of one of these races. it's really close. 2.61 seconds is like just a fraction of a second per lap that he was off. Did you feel at any point that pressure? I know he got right up behind you. Did you think he might make an attempt on you?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I'm hopeless with fuel, and me trying to make it to 12 laps was like a mission for me because I use so much more fuel. Even though we have the same setup, it's a fixed setup and it's exactly the same. There's nothing special about it. I always seem to use more fuel than everybody else, only because I'm on the gas for a lot longer and I get onto the gas a lot earlier. So I'm using a lot of fuel. For me to try and save fuel to even stretch it out to that 12 laps was a little bit difficult. So when Dave was catching me, I was actually running fuel map 5, fuel map 4, fuel map 5, just to try and save that fuel. But yeah, I think I was covered. Like, I still had the speed there. If he did get past, I still would have got him in the pits and back out again. But it would have been a good challenge, that's for sure, around the track.
Well, he kept you honest. I mean, certainly if you did have a hardware failure or if you did dip a wheel or something like that, he would have been right there to take advantage. But either way, Graham, super solid performance and being able to get through without freaking out too much about your wheel. I mean, some drivers, that could just take them completely out of the race, but you stayed focused. And it's not unlike when you watch in real life. I mean, sometimes these drivers, they have the same thing. They lose a aspect of their car that's no longer usable. Somehow they can't adjust the weight jacker, or they can't do this or they can't do that during the course of the race. But you got to keep your focus. You managed to do that today. Absolutely fantastic performance, and I think, like I said, this is going to lock the championship for you. So congratulations early on doing that. But either way, I know we're all sort of looking forward to 2 weeks from now getting to go out there to Indy, and in the meantime, we'll get a chance to watch Indy on TV.
Yeah, definitely are. Look, I always love watching the real life Indy. Just again, it's a shame that we don't have their support here at this present time, but I'm sure it will happen in the future again one day. But yeah, look, I'll be glad to have the 2 weeks off. I've really got to do something with. I just took 2 weeks holidays for a sore back, but and I did say I was going to do the rig, but you know what? It's still sitting right beside me in the same position with the sheets over it. And it's just sitting there looking at me saying, "You're a waste of space, mate."
Well, I've tried everything I can do. I've tried prompting you. I've tried talking about it. But sooner or later, you'll make that decision. You want to switch over to it. But either way, maybe today with the wheel malfunctioning, it's a good time to see if you can make the switch. Either way, congratulations on getting through this season and really not making very many mistakes and having to do some recovery drives. Like I said, this closes it out for you, but we'll wait until 2 weeks time to officially crown you. But once again, congratulations on a fantastic season, and we'll look forward to seeing you at Indy.
Yeah, awesome stuff. And again, just thanks to everybody that turns up. Again, like I say, I wish there was a lot more people that did compete, but I'm sure it'll happen one day. But yeah, to everybody else that turns up week in, week out, again, thanks for doing it. It means a lot. And for yourself, putting on the show as well, in the underground world. It's crazy. And definitely congratulations to everybody who raced today. And I got to shout out to Richard Kelbaugh, man. What a heck of a drive, man. Good on him.
Yeah, and Gomez Esteban also. He you can go back and watch the broadcast. He and Iñigo Mardones had a side-by-side battle, and Gomez Esteban held strong there at the end, and Mardones tried to overtake him, but Gomez Esteban just rock solid on the track, able to keep it going, and he ends up in a top 5. MJ ending up with the top 4. So
yeah, nice.
Great performances from a number of these drivers, and this is one of those tracks where it's easy to get into like a lull and just throw it off or have an issue, but a lot of these drivers keeping it on track, doing a great job, getting through 45 laps, and that's something solid. So hey, we'll see.
Yeah, definitely. And I look, I think these road courses bring out different aspects. You have your fast guys up the front, you have your middle pack, and then you have your back pack, and there's always a bunch of guys that are racing together. So it's everybody's still racing everybody, and it's like I had a conversation yesterday. I maybe a fast driver, but there's still always that driver that's better than me, and I've got to beat that driver every week. And that driver at the moment is David Strid. So my aim is to beat him every week, and he pushes me to drive faster every week. So everybody has their person they chase, and they all are doing it.
Well,
I don't think they realize they're doing it, but they are doing it.
Well, and that is a threat. I mean, like I said before, 2.61 seconds back. If you make any kind of a mistake, David Strid wins this race.
Yeah.
So there's that. And secondly, I mean, every driver, it doesn't matter how good you are, and we've seen this time and time again, in any type of class of racing. You think you're the greatest? Trust me, there's somebody better than you that will show up and
Definitely.
beat you. And that is one of the things that could happen. You know that there's things that we're working on for next season that hopefully will bring in more drivers, possibly to this league as well. You know, if you expand this field to 26 cars and you get in some new talent, there may be 4 or 5 drivers that are more capable on any given day, whether it be this type of a track or an oval or whatever. And then suddenly, you know, it's kind of back to school for Graham Bunyan to figure out, okay, how do I get faster? You know, how do I sharpen up my tools to be able to get even better? So at the meantime, you still gotta keep it clean, because David could take you in this race, but also it's a battle with the track always, and just making sure that you make no mistakes and make your pit stops effectively. Hey, you've been great. You kept it clean here today. You got through some adversity with your technical hardware. Graham, you're always a great benchmark for these drivers. And of course, we'll see you in 2 weeks at Indy. Should be an exciting race no matter what.
Yeah, cheers, no worries. And again, thanks for everything you do, and well done to Dave and Jason and the top 5, MJ and Manuel. Well done.
Absolutely. So that is Graham Bunyan checking in with us here in the Parkinson's Awareness Michael J. Fox Foundation post-race victory discussion. It's been a great race here from Watkins Glen, but that's going to do it for us. Congratulations to the top 3, Graham Bunyan, David Strid, and Jason Lowe. I'm Trevor Greenfield. You've been watching VirtualRacing.Network. And if you're not already subscribed, make sure you hit that subscribe button, like this video if you can, and please take care of our presenting sponsor. That is the Michael J. Fox Foundation. Again, michaeljfox.org. Excuse me, give.michaeljfox.org/VRN. That's our campaign. If you can give $5, that's awesome. Whatever you can do, we appreciate it. And thanks again for joining us here at Watkins Glen. On behalf of everybody here in the league, including the competitors and the admin, wish you a wonderful rest of your week. So 2 weeks from now, we'll see you at Indy. Until then, have a good one. Bye-bye, everybody.